Pound of Flesh by Shembre. Chapter 13. The way it was for the next 4 days reminded Kovu of his very first days with the Pridelanders. While Simba avoided Kovu, and once news spread to everyone in the Pride that Kovu had gone to Zizira, Kovu was happy enough to spend most of the time as far away from everyone, as far as he was allowed to go, of course. He rose early in the morning before Simba left for patrol, and he returned to his new spot right outside the den at last light. Kovu hadn't expected anything less from his family, but he felt overwhelmed by the loneliness and anger that he should have anticipated. He had rejected the outsiders, but now the Pridelanders. The majority of them would be grateful if he left and never returned. Nobody would look him in the eye, and he knew they were whispering behind his back. Kiara sought Kovu out, mostly when she had food for him, but he doubted his ability to keep his frustration in check. He kept his distance. The last thing he wanted to do was turn Kiara against him. Every time she saw him, she apologized for telling on him, renewing memories of his meeting with Zira and reminding him of the situation he'd gotten himself into with Simba. He accepted her apologies and told her it was okay, but said nothing more. He knew then that the pain of his own thoughts was far worse than any pain Zira could inflict on his body, and only slightly less than the pain she could cause him by inflicting pain on any member of his adopted family. The scene outside the den that terrible night when he'd run home replayed over and over in Kovu's head. Simba's eyes narrowed with displeasure, tone furious. "It is my responsibility to protect my pride and deal with Zira. But you had done nothing. This is for me to take care of. I won't say I'm surprised, but I am disappointed. You knew better, Kovu." He'd broken Simba's trust, the one part of their relationship that Kovu had prized the most. He wasn't sure what angered him more, the fact that Zira had been exactly who Kovu thought she would be, and more, or that Simba had felt the need to forbid Kovu from seeing her again. Going to see Zira had solved nothing, and the outsiders were still a threat to the Pride. And how dare Zira? How dare she keep him there and continue to insist that he killed Simba? She was the one lost in herself, filled with nothing but psychotic, wicked dreams. And he just stood there, trying to be diplomatic, when all he'd wanted was for her to drop over dead, so that everyone could be done with it all. If only something would happen to her. If only someone could eliminate her. Kovu, stewing over everything with his clenched jaw resting on his foreleg, looked up when he realized that the lioness was standing in front of him. "Hello, Kovu." "Hello, Sorabi." He sat up and raised a questioning eyebrow. "I've been standing here for quite a while. Deep in thought?" Kovu looked away. "Yes," he admitted. "All I can do is lie here and think. What other choice do I have?" He flicked a pebble with a claw. Sorabi sat down. "You do have the choice to not torture yourself. That's the first thing I learned when Mufasa died, and I believed that my only son had been taken from me. You can't do much about Zira, but brooding won't do you any good, Kovu. Simba will come back around. He's just worried about you." Kovu heaved a sigh. "I guess I know that, but..." He issued a quiet growl. "I was a fool, an idiot. It was the dumbest thing I could have... I don't know what I was thinking, and Zira didn't even listen at all. And I just made her angrier. And now Simba is never going to trust me the same way again, and I calmed down." Sorabi rested a paw on his shoulder. He heaved a shaky breath and looked at her before looking away. His eyes stung. He couldn't cry in front of her. "Calm down," Sarabi whispered soothingly. "For what it's worth, I don't think you did anything wrong." "I was still foolish and reckless." "Yes, you might have been a bit foolish and reckless, but everyone acts that way at least once in a lifetime. Perfection for so long is impossible, so don't you be ashamed of your mistakes. Kovu, you can't grow without making a few. The shame that you feel now will go away in time, and when it does, you'll always carry with you what you have learned." Sarabi put her paw under his jaw and tilted his chin up. "I have seen you sulk for days. Why don't you and I go for a walk? Kovu grimaced and averted his eyes. I'm not up to it." "If I say you are, then you are." She gently tilted his chin up a bit more. "There you go. This suits you more. With that chin up high instead of resting on your paws while you sulk." She removed her paw. "Come, the exercise will be good for you." She turned and started to walk away. Kovu half smiled before he gave in. "All right." "Good." Over her shoulder, the elderly lioness smiled. "Rafiki, Kovu isn't a helpless cub anymore. I think that terrifies me." The stalemate between Simba and Kovu had gone on too long for Nala, and she had ordered the king to seek counsel with Rafiki. Guilt-ridden, after seeing how downcast Kovu had been, Simba sat with the old mandrill under the shade of the big tree, staring at his paws. Rafiki rubbed the grey hair on his chin. "You are not frightened of the boy?" "No." Simba looked up and stared at Rafiki for a moment before he averted his eyes. "I know Kovu and I'm not afraid of him. He wouldn't... He's been through so much and he doesn't need me to doubt him. But now he thinks that It's just... He can get himself into serious trouble. And it might be trouble that I can't get him out of. He wasn't thinking when he went to see his mother. He put himself into serious danger." Simba shifted his weight and narrowed his eyes. "He went to see her behind my back. And he went because he saw me doing nothing. I've done nothing. And I'm the king. I'm supposed to make my pride feel safe. Aren't I?" Rafiki leaned forward slightly. Simba continued, his words gaining in ferocity. "I dethroned Scar, the murderer of my father, and now I'm letting everybody live in fear of this deranged lioness. And I won't say that Kovu hasn't shaken my trust in him." The king admitted sadly. He looked at his paws. "Last night, I couldn't sleep, and I watched Kovu toss and turn outside of the den. I know I need to trust him. I cannot doubt him now. He looked crushed that I was so disappointed. He hasn't slept inside the den since that night." Simba paused and sighed. "How can I speak to Kovu calmly when we can barely look at each other, Rafiki?" "Both you and Kovu have your hearts in the right place, and Kovu's heart must be stronger than the endless hatred of his mother." Rafiki put his fingered paw on Simba's shoulder. "Don't worry so much. Let your worry flow away from you instead of building up. Yes." He smiled. "A king may always know the right thing to do, but the hardest part is doing it. Speak to the boy because you are afraid. Defend him against his fears. Are you more worried that you don't know Kovu? Or do you fear losing another son far more?" Simba grimaced and shuddered involuntarily. "I also can't shake the feeling that something bad is going to happen." "You've taught Kovu well, and hey, Rafiki." Simba and the mandrill looked down. A gopher had appeared, and he was looking up expectantly. "How about something for my brother?" the gopher demanded. He gestured to his back. "There's this thing, it's been growing on my brother since the rainy season. We weren't concerned at first, but now that it's sprung a leak, we're thinking we should have come to see her when it got big enough for the little ones to use it as a pillow." "Just one moment." Rafiki turned to Simba and passed over his stick. "Hold this." Clumsily, Simba kept the stick upright. Rafiki dashed up into his tree. Simba glanced at the gopher, who smiled back awkwardly at the Lion King. They both looked up when they heard the rustle of leaves. Rafiki leaped down, bearing a tiny leaf bundle. He gave it to the gopher. "Here, apply this poultice to your brother's back, and you will be better in no time. Visit again in 2 days. "Great, thank you." Rafiki waved to the gopher as he scampered away before he took his stick back from Simba. "As I was saying, you have taught Kovu well. He knows right from wrong." The mandrill raised the finger and shook it at Simba. "Do not take what he's learned for granted. You must speak with him. Let him know that he is still welcome. He needs you now more than ever." "I must speak to Kovu," Simba told himself on the walk home. He found Nala to ask if she'd seen their adopted son. "Your mother wanted to spend some time with Kovu," Nala explained. "She went to cheer him up, and I saw them go for a walk. You know he hasn't been himself." Simba looked down guiltily. "Why were you looking for Kovu?" Nala asked. She gave him a little smile. Simba sighed. I went to see Rafiki, like you asked me to." Nala's smile widened. "Did he help?" "I hope so. I feel like my mind is a little clearer. You two do need to talk. That's the next step." Nala nuzzled him. "You know, Kovu meant well, deep down, and Kovu is not your past. He is your future." Simba smiled at his mate. "You always know what to say, don't you?" Nala nodded and nuzzled his mane. "Say that more often and I wouldn't mind one bit." Kovu and Sarabi walked through the Pride Lands. For a long while they walked in silence. The sun was beginning to set. They would need to turn around soon, and Kovu didn't want Sarabi to tire herself out for his benefit. He could admit that walking felt far better than just sulking, letting his thoughts consume him, making him angrier. "I want you to speak to Simba tomorrow," Sarabi said suddenly, startling Kovu a bit. Kovu frowned. "But what do I say?" Sarabi smiled sweetly. "You'll know what to say. Start with what you've told me. Nala made Simba go to Rafiki today. He might have something to say to you too." She paused. "Just remember to stay calm. I hope neither of you gets in your own way." Kovu made a face. "I could think of worse things that could happen besides getting in my way," Kovu muttered. "Or I'll overthink it. Or Simba still won't understand, because how could he really?" He glanced at Sarabi. "And even if I can get back on Simba's good side, everyone else in the Pride will still judge me for one stupid moment. They're not even just judging me because of my mother anymore." Sarabi sighed. "You're more than what anyone makes of you. You're the one who makes you, you. You don't need much more than what's already inside of you. You'll show the rest of the Pride who you really are and that you are worthy." "What if I don't like who I am?" Kovu muttered. "Don't do that to yourself, Kovu." Sarabi smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I like who you are, but you have to like who you are too. You do have a choice. You have a choice to like yourself." "Kovu, Don't let self-pity swallow you up. You can't change your mother and who she is. You can't change what she might want you to do. She was foolish herself to fall for Scar's charms. You can't change any of that. So why let it get to you? Kovu turned his head away. I've been told that I was only born to serve her purposes. But you would never act on those purposes. Kovu shook his head. I just feel like I'm stuck between two families, paws in both worlds. I know I want to be here, but I don't know if I'm ever going to feel like I belong anywhere. You do belong here, in the Pride Lands. And although you can't replace Cooper, nor would I want to, you are the son that Simba didn't get to have. Sarabi paused again. When you first came to this pride, I saw pieces of my son begin to come back together. Sarabi stopped walking and turned to him. Simba didn't have to take a chance on you. He might not know how to show it, but he's proud of you. I am proud of you. A small, slow smile formed on Kovu's mouth. Thank you, Sarabi. Sarabi nodded, smiling. She touched her paw to Kovu's foreleg. Now let's go home. It's getting dark, and I could use a rest. I'll sleep well tonight, but I'll be sore tomorrow. The pair turned smiling, but the smiles ran from their faces when they were face to face with Zira and several of her lionesses, including Vitani. Nuka sneered at Kovu. The angular-faced outsider had snuck up on the pair from behind. No! Kovu hissed under his breath. No! Oh no! His eyes widened in horror. Sarabi snarled, lowering her head aggressively at the red-eyed lioness who stood at the head of the group. Zira! Simba waited impatiently for Kovu and Sarabi to return. Nala and Kiara sat with him at the den entrance. They had expected Kovu and Sarabi to be back at Pride Rock by dusk, at the latest, and now everyone else had settled down in the den for the night, and there was no sign of the pair. Simba's ears picked up the chirp of crickets, but there wasn't much else to fill the tense silence. Something's wrong, Simba muttered finally. Nala told him quietly, they're just taking their time. Her voice hinted at her concern. No, something's wrong, Simba insisted. He turned to Nala and his daughter. They'll be back any moment. Kovu is with your mother. He wouldn't let anything happen. Nala looked to the side and thought. Maybe we should send Zazu out just to be safe. Kiara flinched and lowered her ears. Simba ground his teeth for a moment and sighed. Yes. He nodded. Just to be safe. End of chapter 13.